So it's good to see everyone. Many of you may know me. I've been involved with the W3C as a representative from Adobe Systems for almost 20 years now in various committees. Um, what I want to talk to you about today is a role that I've had for about 4 years now since we founded the organization. So a group of companies came together about 4 years ago in 2020 to found what we call the C2PA. The C2PA, the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, is a Linux Foundation joint development foundation project. And our mission is to develop technical specifications that can establish content provenance and authenticity at scale. And we want to give publishers, creators, and consumers the ability to trace the origin of their media. So this is the idea, this is the thing that we have been working on for these years. And over that time, we developed a specification, which we refer to now as Content Credentials. So the membership of our organization is growing very quickly. I actually just updated another 30 members to the list that you see here, but you'll recognize a lot of logos, many of whom you are and represent sitting in this room. In addition, we have formal liaisons. So in addition to my being an informal liaison with the W3C and a number of working groups and community groups, we have formal liaisons with the ISO, the IPTC, ETSI, which is the European standards body focused on digital signatures and identity, and also the PDF Association. So why did we choose to focus on provenance? We chose to focus on provenance for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it's not an arms race. We are not challenging anyone. We're not, especially in the world of AI, we're not trying to detect something and then they're going to beat our detector and we have to beat their attacks. And we don't want to do that. Many of us have been around, go back to the days of copy protection, and it didn't work then and it's not going to work now. Secondarily, edits are good. Just because something was created doesn't mean it stops there. Whether that is simply applying a basic filter, scaling it, transcoding it, or actually editing the content using tools like Adobe Photoshop, these are all part of an asset's life cycle, and they need to be incorporated into that provenance. And that provenance is the who, the what, the where, the when, the how, and the why. All of the questions that you might ask about something. We also were very heartened to see the ethical web principles coming from the W3C, and one of them very specifically has been part of our DNA, and that is that the web must make it possible for people to verify information and assess the trustworthiness of its source, which is exactly what we've been trying to do, and we believe we are accomplishing and will continue to accomplish with the technology that we've built. So let me talk a little bit about what that technology is. And of course, given the limited amount of time, I'll stick at a very high level. But what we have done is we've built an encapsulation of data we call a C2PA manifest. And inside of that manifest are basically three sub areas. The most important one from a provenance perspective is what we call the assertion store. Assertions are the statements of fact or of that provenance of the history of the asset. So for example, you might have information about the identity of the person or persons involved in various aspects. You might want to refer to different actions that took place throughout the life cycle of the asset. And then there might have been other ingredients that were used. So for example, you might have taken one asset, placed it into another, and continue to build. Very common, especially in video and audio, but even in the context of images or documents or other types of media. So all of this gets bundled together into what we call a claim, and then the claim is digitally signed, producing what we call our claim signature. And on the right here, you can see what a user interface to display that kind of information might look like. The most important thing when we were designing this was we believe very strongly in not reinventing the wheel. So we leveraged a lot of standards, some of the ones, of course, from the W3C. We rely on JSON LD as a serialization model. Verifiable credentials are a key part of our identity mechanism. We've leveraged parts of web annotations, of media fragments, and various others as well. So fortunately, we believe we've been working on this work and had already released a couple versions of our specification when the generative AI world came into being and took over where it is today. And so we were able to leverage the work that we had done to also represent various aspects of AI and generative AI. So the first and most important one is that you can identify, we started, of course, saying, this asset has been captured from a captured device or created from scratch. So creation via generative AI is just another, what we call digital source type that can be reflected in the provenance of the asset. And as you can see here, not only do we establish that this asset, while it wasn't created by generative AI, was modified by generative AI. So we actually consider that a different aspect. And we can even identify, using what we call regions of interest, what areas of the asset were impacted by the generative AI, separate from where it was originally. And you can also see here the tools that were involved, the AI model that was used. You can even incorporate information, for example, about the actual prompts or seeds or reference information that was included as well. It's a very flexible system for as much or as little information as you want to incorporate for that identification. So one of the community groups that I was active in, actually, I guess I'm still active in here in the W3C, was the text and data mining community group, which helped define the TDM rep work. So I took the work that came out of that group, the ideas that group put together to understand the text and data mining requirements, and built upon them to create what we call our training and data mining assertion. So the same idea that we want the authors, the publishers of content, to be able to stipulate, can this asset be used for training of generative AI, for regular AI training, and of course, just for general data mining as well. And one of the nice things about this is because it parallels nicely with something like TDM rep. TDM rep is great for serving. You stick it on your server, but your assets can move around in other storage systems. We were just talking about solid and pod. What happens if your image goes into a pod? It's not directly connected, for example, back to the server. So having the TDM information, the text and data mining data, inside of that provenance, embedded inside of your image or your video, now becomes extremely important. So I mentioned embedding. Content credentials or C2PA manifest can be embedded into a number of different formats, about a dozen different image formats, others that aren't listed if they're based on BMFF. So we do support ISO BMFF as a core embedding technology as well. Video formats, MP4s and AVIs, audio from FLAC and MP3. We also do documents, PDF and EPUB. We recently worked with the publishing community group to help ensure that we properly were able to embed this inside of EPUB. Also fonts, we've worked very recently with the font community. So we want to ensure that various font technologies can also express the provenance of that font, and that information can carry through, and also generalized containers. In addition to being embedded, we also recognize that there are a lot of use cases where you don't want that data embedded, but you'd like to carry it on the side in some fashion. So whether that side is on a server or on a DLT or blockchain, right next to it in a file system, and then served either by URL. We have a standardized HTTP link header, file system paths. We don't really care. We've got a very flexible system that allows for both, again, embedding as well as referenced back to the provenance. And then just to wrap it all up, all of this sits on top of what we call the C2PA trust model. And that trust model is, again, nothing new. We leverage the exact same X509 certificate-based trust model that the web does, the PDF does. We use a different set of trust lists and a different set of certificate profiles on which ours are based, but that's just a minor detail. At the end of the day, the idea of X509 certificates, standard cryptographic hashing, certificate authorities, and trust lists form the exact same basis of our trust model as it does for the web. And with that, let me thank you for your time and letting me present today. And I'm happy to answer any questions now, or of course, most of you know how to reach me.